Welcome to another episode of the Gym Informer podcast, where we talk to gym owners of gyms that we've been to, trained at, and reviewed. I'm Chris Gilbert, your host for this episode of Gym Informer, along with my co-host and co-founder of Classic Iron Fitness, Jason Goldman. Today, we've got Luke Huntzinger on as our guest. Luke is the owner of Southside Strength outside of Nashville, Tennessee. It's a really cool powerlifting gym. So before we get started with Luke, why don't we show you some photos that I took when I was there working out. Okay, so Luke, thanks for coming on with us.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
So, Luke, you were ex-military, yes?
Yes, sir. I was in the Coast Guard.
Oh, okay. So how did you transition from the Coast Guard to gym ownership? Can you give us a little background on that?
Yeah, no problem. So the first 2 years in the Coast Guard, I was in North Carolina. I was on a small boat down there. Honestly, still wasn't planning on taking this path at all. And then my last 2 years, that's where the transition started. I was in Rhode Island, Newport, Rhode Island,
Okay.
at a search and rescue station, a small boat station. Well, you're kind of like a firefighter there as far as your schedule. It's 48 on, 48 off, and then 72 on, 72 off. Well, when you're on, your workday is basically done at about 4:30 if there's no search and rescue, but you're
Sure.
staying overnight. So instead of hanging out in the barracks watching TV, I was pretty much living in the gym.
Uh-huh.
And then the naval base right there is where the Naval Academy is, and they have a beautiful gym. So I'd go over there a lot as well, had access to that. And I pretty much just lived in the gym, was helping people so much that, one, I became in charge of our units, physical standards, and ran all that for the unit. And then my boss, actually, when I was in the gym one day, he's like, you're so passionate about this. You live out here basically in the gym, helping people 24/7. Have you ever thought about, getting out and doing this professionally? And I'm like, no. But that's kind of what had started it. And I ended up getting out, and I went to the National Personal Training Institute in Arizona. That was a 6-month school for this.
Uh-huh.
And with 2 months left of school, there was actually 2 small studios out there this guy owned, and it was called In-N-Out Fitness. Well, I'm sure you've heard of In-N-Out Burger out there.
I have.
The one he had in North Scottsdale, In-N-Out Burger, didn't want that name around, so they paid him some good bucks to close. Well, he ended up doing what he would call a fire sale, and he chopped that price way down, and I happened to find it.
Uh-huh.
And that was just a real hoity-toity one-on-one small studio. I ran that for about 4 years, and then ended up meeting a guy out there that was into boxing and MMA, and we ended up combining our gyms, and I got into that for about 4 years as well.
So this all started in Arizona. So how'd you end up in Tennessee?
All right, so that story. Arizona, my wife, she got pregnant, and we had no family out there, and she was from Tennessee.
Ah.
And I'll be honest, I didn't do the greatest out there. The real success came here.
Sure.
But truthfully, I was worried about moving to Tennessee. I had never been to the South, and I thought, Scottsdale's very wealthy, and I just never thought I would do that well here. And it was a blessing in disguise, because the success really came when I came here.
Right. And how long has the gym been open in Tennessee now for?
So this spot, 5 years. When I first moved here, I didn't think I wanted to own a gym again. I just thought I wanted to work in a gym but not have all the extra headaches and everything else to ownership. But
Right.
Really, that story is I was at, it's now Carbon Culture, which you guys have had them on.
Mm-hmm.
It was Franklin Athletic Club at the time. And the owner actually built out, they had a little movie theater room in there, and he had built out basically my own gym inside of the gym. But shouldn't say this, but the roof was leaking. There was all kinds of problems that I knew I got to get out and do my own thing. But really what got me to do my own thing again was the fact that that was when I was in the prime of my powerlifting. So you stuck out like a sore thumb in a place like that. When you're squatting 600 plus pounds and you
Sure.
don't look like it, people are, turning heads. Well, then it turned into a daily thing where people were constantly coming up to me and saying, hey, is there anywhere more hardcore? Is there anywhere that has these kind of bars? Is there anywhere, I can put some chalk on and grunt a little bit? Is there anywhere, I'm not going to get yelled at having my bag out? And it was just constant things that I'm like, yeah, these are things I would like too. And realizing nobody had it around here. So I really I wanted to capture that market before somebody else did.
That was your calling at that point, huh?
Yes, sir.
All right. Nice to hear. So, Chris, tell us a little bit about your training experiences there.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, the gym, it's a super cool gym. It's not a huge powerlifting gym, but they've got some really unique pieces of equipment. And I know you've changed some of them out since I've been there, but how do you decide what pieces go in the gym? I know floor space is at a premium, but you had some really cool pieces of equipment I hadn't seen anywhere else.
Yeah. The backstory on that one is actually Arsenal. I had called him first. He was from Murfreesboro, and I had called him, and I appreciate this. He was very open and honest with me that his equipment was a little more high-end for bodybuilding style, which is really what Carbon ended up turning into using Arsenal. But he had told me to call Heavy from Dynabody, and I knew him from powerlifting. And I had called Heavy, and yeah, that his equipment was way more geared towards what I was looking to do, and it was where I was going to have my best bang for my buck. So I really just kind of outfitted it using him for a while. But currently, I want to make sure I recognize him. Currently, I use Jason from Surplus Strength. He's local, and that's who we really use. And it's been a great relationship because what he likes is, we currently have one of the strongest gyms in the country, and some of the athletes in there, like an Evan Singleton who finished 4th at Worlds this year. Mm-hmm. Well, Jason loves that he gets to try out the equipment on some of the strongest guys in the world, which gives him feedback to make sure that his equipment is, up to the standards that he wants.
Sure.
So that's been a win-win relationship there. And then as far as unique stuff, yeah, when I brought on Adam Dirks, who's a 2-time world record holder in the deadlift and one of the better strongman coaches out there, he had a lot of unique equipment too that nobody else has. For example, I think it was the Andy Bolton's. I think it's not the Mastodon, but what is that bar? Yeah, I think it might be a Mastodon, but it's a super long, like an elephant. Oh, it's an elephant bar.
Elephant bar, yeah. I'm familiar with elephant bars. So
yeah, we have that original one that he broke over 1,000 with. Slater logs, stones, all kinds of stuff, that you don't see in other places.
Right.
Wow. Yeah, the other thing I thought was really cool is it's definitely 100% powerlifting gym. Like you walk in there and you're like, all right, this is a powerlifting gym. This is a place for me to go if I want to get strong. But it also has an inviting feel to it. I know you talked to me whenever you got there about the area you were in and how you did some things to bring different kinds of people in. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So, the big scare was, everybody's telling you that a hardcore gym is never going to work in Williamson County, which is exactly why nobody has done it before. And, why people kept coming up to me at the gym asking if there was a place like this, because nobody was taking the risk to do it. Well, that's kind of my MO, is I like to take risks. But yeah, I was nervous because the overhead was quite hefty where we are. And knowing I wouldn't have a lot of time to make it work, it had to work right away or I was going to be in trouble. So what I really did was just kind of analyze people and realize that people are judgmental. So what I wanted to do was I actually started out with a bunch of boot camps, probably 4 times a day. I was there. For the first year, I was probably there for 14-hour days because what I wanted was these boot camps to be full. And I wanted these women, your quote unquote Williamson County soccer moms, your average Joes. I wanted them to look around and go, hey, wait a minute. That tatted out, scary looking guy that's real strong over there is actually a really nice guy. hey, that girl with purple hair that, has got some, nose piercings or whatever, just they're the ones that are being judgmental, and they would realize, hey, these people are really, really nice, really kind. Next thing you know, they're being invited to lift by them, and then they're trickling out of the boot camp. Well, that was my plan all along. I never wanted the boot camp. I just used boot camp to get them comfortable in the environment and make them realize that, wait a minute, I'm the judgmental one.
Right.
So kind of broke the mold by doing that. And once you broke the mold, that was it. That was all she wrote. And Chris, I know we talked about this before, is another thing I prided myself on too, though, is we are clean. Like, it's not, everything's new, everything's taken care of. If something, I won't rip other gyms for this specifically, but I've seen way too many gyms where something's torn, something's broken, and it's got a sign on it saying, parts coming soon, and 6 months later it still says it. So my thing was, I wanted members to also see that their membership money wasn't just going in my pocket, and I've proven that, countless times, from upgrading equipment to something's torn or something's broke, or members had voted on, we want this equipment and not this piece, and constantly reinvesting that money and keeping the gym clean and nice. So that's another thing I had to do, because I knew that in Williamson County, the hardcore gym was already going to be hard enough, but it couldn't be a dump like some of these hardcore gyms do.
Right.
Yeah, it was definitely one of the cleanest powerlifting gyms that I've been in. You were personally cleaning the gym the day I was there. So, kudos for being in there, like doing your thing. That all, I think, fed into the environment and the atmosphere. Was just the fact that it was hardcore, but also inviting, because it was so clean. It was pretty well organized. Like, it wasn't hard to find what you were looking for.
Yep.
And
then earlier I brought up Evan, but that's another part of that environment, is you come in, and one of my things is that nobody's better than anybody. Everybody's just trying to get better. So you could be, and I have it. I have old, I got young, you got everything. Soccer mom, athlete. But you could be right next to Evan Singleton. He could be 900 plus pound deadlifting, and if a 40-some-year-old soccer mom's going for a PR at 135, he's going to cheer her on, just as hard as he would anybody else. Because if it means something to her, it means something to everybody else. People will stop, they'll cheer you on. It's really about you getting better, and not nobody's better than anybody environment is really what it is.
Yeah, it's one of the things we love about really good powerlifting gyms, is that seems to be, like, if the owner's done a good job of setting up the gym and creating the culture, it seems to be that kind of culture where the members are more like a family. And you'll see that in bodybuilding gyms to some degree, but bodybuilding is such an individualized sport that I think powerlifting gyms really emphasize that sort of family feel.
Yep. Now, we call it, on this podcast, we're calling it that, but I actually had stopped calling it that. That was a mistake I made in a previous location, was I would just call it a powerlifting gym. And that actually hurt me, because the general public at that time, they thought I can't go there unless I'm a power lifter. Or I would get phone calls and somebody says, well, I don't compete. Am I allowed there? And I'm like, well, of course you are. So really just a little bit of change in language is, I really just say that it's a strength training gym for anybody, but we cater to power lifters and strongman, but we're a strength training gym.
Right. More inviting verbiage is what you change it to. Yeah.
Yep. And that mattered.
Sure.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's interesting, out there, how little tiny tweaks to verbiage can really change to people who aren't a part of the world already.
Yep.
So, we talked about your equipment, we talked about your atmosphere, we talked about your organization. You've owned a few different gyms, and you've had this one for a little while. Is there any advice that you would give to someone that was thinking about opening a gym like this?
Yeah. I always bring this up that I get shadowed by people every now and then. We just had a intern from MTSU recently, Alaya, and he was a huge help for us. But that's one of their main questions when they have to do their questionnaire. And my big thing is just that way too many people think this is easy. Opening gyms and keeping them open is extremely hard. I don't root for anybody to shut down, but yeah, I mean, I had a family walk in yesterday because I won't say the gym name, but they showed up at one of the local gyms, had been training with their trainer, find out he's closing his doors this week. He can't afford to keep it open anymore.
Wow.
So again, I don't root for that, but way too many people think this is easy. So one, you better have the overhead to last a couple months, because you're not just going to open your doors and all of a sudden a flood of people come. And then, I've touched on it, but I would say the number one thing is people focus on the equipment, and don't realize that you could have the greatest equipment in the world, but if the environment's not right, you're already dead in the water. And then, I mean, trainers or owners, this goes for both, is you're a marketer first, and you better know how to create relationships. Way too many people are like, well, I'm good at training. Well, that's great, but I mean, you could have all the knowledge in the world if you can't figure out how to get the customer in the door first, because you suck at relationships.
Right.
You're dead in the water.
Right.
So
Yeah.
understanding that you're a marketer first and that it's relationships.
That's a good piece of advice.
Yeah, I'm sure you're seeing this too, Jason, in the Midwest, but it seems like we're starting to see a resurgence of people going back to locally owned gyms, and they're understanding that the environment, the atmosphere there is so much better than the big commercial gyms. But you still got to know what you're doing, as you just said, that, even with the resurgence, there are still gyms going out of business.
Yep. I mean, even to your point, I mean, I haven't really looked at the market lately with it, but I know for a fact during COVID, yeah, that transition happened again, because people wanted to be around like-minded people. They wanted to know the people they are around versus being in these huge health clubs. I mean, during COVID, I was getting phone calls left and right of like, hey, I just want to be around more like-minded people. And they didn't want to be in these large gyms where they didn't know anybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've done reviews personally at some of those large gyms, and I'm in a gym that's got 150 plus people. I'm there for an hour and a half, training, taking photos, talking to people the best that I can to try to get a feel for it. And short of that, not a single one of those people ever approached me for any kind of a conversation. It was like everyone was there doing their own thing in their own headspace, didn't want to have anything to do with anyone else. And you're right, they had the best equipment on the planet money could buy, but the atmosphere was garbage.
Yep.
And there's no way that you could get me to go to something like that on a regular basis. So
yeah, I mean, Alex Hermosi, who's one of the best marketers in this industry, he's got a book on this where, I mean, he had a beautiful gym and it failed because he didn't build the environment. And then he had one that was so as far as equipment, and he crushed it because he learned it was environment.
Right.
Yeah, we always say the equipment will get you in the door, but the atmosphere keeps you there.
Keeps you there. Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So
very true.
I didn't have anything else. Did you have anything else, Jason?
No. I appreciate this time with Luke, though. This was very inspiring. So I wish I had a chance to come out there and train, but
always welcome anytime. So
yeah, I'm sure I'll get out there. I actually work for a corporate company that I've got 2 big projects in Murfreesboro and Nashville.
Oh, perfect. Well, sometime if you ever
if I got to get on a plane in early 2024 to go to those, I'll be looking you up. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yep, cool.
All right, we appreciate your time, Luke. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
You got it. Take care, all.
All right, bye-bye.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more great content.